Welcome or welcome back to the channel. Thanks for stopping by. I hope you're good and welcome to some Tomes and Treasures recommendations. Tomes and Treasures round 2 is happening in November. If you missed the announcement, don't worry, it's all linked in the description box below. Mine and Ash's announcement videos, plus the link to the Google Drive and everything that you need. Round 2 is a bingo board style readathon, and me and Ash have taken half of the prompts each, and we've got some recommendations for you. So anything that you don't see in this video, don't worry, Ash has you covered. Just pop on over to her channel and she has her own video full of recommendations for you. As this is me, I have done a book and manga recommendation and sometimes a couple of extra mangas for you. I'm helping. First up, we have Retrieve a Family's Sacred Sword, which is to read a book with a weapon on the cover. My book recommendation is Bury Your Gaze by Chuck Tingle. We have this bloody mallet on the front. That is your weapon. This is one of my favourite books of the year so far. If this isn't in my top 10, I will be really shocked. This is basically about this guy who is a scriptwriter in Hollywood, and he's got like a really successful TV show under his belt, and then the kind of higher ups decide that he needs to kill off his gay characters, and he really does not want to do that. He is not happy about that, so he kind of rebels, and then the kind of creatures and villains, antagonists if you will, of his horror movie days start to stalk him and his friends. It's really good. I had a really good time with it. I am so excited to see what Chuck Tingle brings out next, because what I've read from him so far, I love his writing style, and the themes and the discussions that he puts into his work are so good, and I'm just excited to read more from him. For the manga recs, I've tried to keep it as volume 1s in case I'm introducing you to a new series. For this prompt, I've gone for Gokurakagi volume 1. I believe that's how you say it. And in this, we're following these two who are troubleshooters in this rundown town without much law and order. There is like weird monsters. What is it? How is it described? Human devouring monsters. That's how it's described. And there's a lot going on, but it was a really good time. I can't wait to continue. I have volume 2. I really need to get to it. I really enjoy the dynamic between these two, and the first volume was very action packed and really set it up well, so I'm excited to see how it continues. Next we have Find a Lost Religious Icon, and the prompt for this one is to read a book with religion or gods. Chuck Tingle is making a second appearance with Camp Damascus. I also read this year, and again, could very well be in my top 10. This is about this girl who lives in this town where it has like a very famous conversion camp, and then there might be something weirder going on. It was absolutely fantastic. Again, so many good discussions, and even though it made me super angry, it was an absolutely fantastic book. I definitely think this is creepier than Bury Your Gaze. Bury Your Gaze is kind of like B-movie horror, and this is kind of, you know, throwing up flies and seeing a strange woman, quite terrifying. And yeah, this definitely was creepier, but I love both because I quite like campy horror too, which is maybe a bit more Bury Your Gaze. But this had some real creepy moments. For my manga rec, I've gone for something that I haven't really discussed much, I haven't really mentioned much. It's Trigun. I am of course being sarcastic. This is Trigun. One of my favourite things. Finally getting to read the manga for the first time, having been obsessed with Trigun Stampede, the anime, for like the last year, and then kind of finding the original anime, and then finally having the reprinted mangas to devour. I already have the next one, and yes, I will be reading it in November. Spoiler for my TBR. This is about a guy called Vash, and he is kind of wanted because wherever he goes, disaster seems to follow. But there is a lot more to it to that. He is he's a gun-wielding pacifist, so you know, maybe there's another reason why he's wanted, you know, maybe there's something else going on. I just freaking love this series. I really do. It has taken over a lot. I really enjoy it, and can I just say, this would fit so many prompts. Obviously, we actually have a weapon on the cover of all of these have got a weapon on the cover. It fits for religion, obviously. It also fits for foiling on the cover. There is disability rep in this. Obviously, it's a manga, so it would fit for that prompt. I know that there was loads of other prompts that I was thinking that it would fit for. In fact, I'll just list them here because I don't have them all in front of me, but I promise you it fits for a lot. So if you're doubling up, like I'm planning on, I'm just saying, if it's on your radar, if it's something that you're thinking of, November might be the time, because you can tick off a whole load of prompts. Next is defeat the wandering skeleton outside town, and the prompt for this is to read a horror or a book that scares you. Obviously, I had a lot of options for this, and the 2 books that I have already wrecked in this video are horror, but I've gone for maybe not the one people thought, because my go-to answer for this sort of thing is always Stolen Tongues, because it is the book that's freaked me out the most, and I'm currently rereading it. I'm actually buddy reading it with Ash and Becca, and I messaged last night and was like, oh, I couldn't remember how it started, and I thought, well, it can't be that creepy off the bat. Completely forgot how much the prologue freaks me out, and just was listening to the audiobook whilst downstairs in my kitchen alone trying to dish up soup. I left the hallway door open, so there was a dark hallway on one side and glass doors on the other, which are quite a big part of the prologue, and I was fine. But I've not gone for Stolen Tongues, although maybe I have. Take that as an extra recommendation. I'm also going to say Summer Suns by Indy Mandello. This is one of my favourite books. I tabbed it last time I read it. Well, I've only read it twice, but when I reread it, I think it was last year. God, I don't know. I think it was last year. And it definitely held up. I enjoyed this so much, but it does have some moments that genuinely creep me out, like make the hair on your arms and the back of your neck stand up, because some of the descriptions of like the entity in this, yeah, it's creepy. This is about a guy called Andrew, and him and his best friend Eddie basically were inseparable. They did everything together, and then Eddie ends up going to, I want to say Vanderbilt, yeah, Vanderbilt, 6 months earlier than Andrew, and by the time Andrew is ready to move down there, Eddie is dead. Everyone tells him that Eddie did this to himself, but Andrew doesn't believe it, and there is this kind of weird secret that kind of comes into play, and it's a Southern Gothic, and it is brilliant. I love the writing in this. I love the kind of discussions about sexuality and about kind of grief, and then just this weird creepy shit going on. So good. I've also not gone for my go-to for manga, which would obviously be Junji Ito. Anything Junji Ito would be a perfect fit for this prompt, because guy writes some creepy stuff, okay? Like, I personally don't know if Junji Ito has ever really scared me, but he's definitely creeped me out because his artwork is, you know, weird as shit. The recommendation I've gone for, it definitely fits under horror. Again, it's got some artwork that is definitely on the creepier side. I've gone for The Summer Hikaru Died. This is one of my favourite things that I have discovered this year. I think I only started reading it this year. And it's basically about these 2 boys that live in this kind of like mountain town, I think. Yeah, because Hikaru is in the mountains, and then when he comes back, his friend, whose name escapes me, Yoshiki is convinced that this is not actually Hikaru, and then things get really weird, both with the characters and also just in the town. And there are definitely some kind of creepy drawings in this, some creepy art, but the actual story I'm finding really beautiful, and like there does seem to be something more than friendship between the 2 main characters, but it's only been hinted at, so I'm not sure where we're going with it. But so far I'm loving this, but there is definitely a lot of horror elements. Next up is Help the Miners Fill Their Quota, and this is to read a book with jewel tones or foiling on the cover. And I struggled, because do you know what, not a lot of horror and stuff has foiling on the cover, and I was getting a lot of my recommendations from there. I also kind of suck at knowing whether colours are jewel tones or whatever. I don't really know what that is, but I used this from, is it Pantone? Pantone? That is like the paint people, right? So I figured if they said it was a jewel tone, it probably fit. Okay, so for my book recommendation, I have foiling on the cover, and I've gone for this edition of Sabriel by Garth Nix. You can see it is super shiny. This is one of my favourite series ever, although I am yet to kind of read, what is it, Clariel and Golden Hand, but the original trilogy I read so many times, and I would love to reread this and kind of continue the series and actually finish it. And Sabriel, I feel like sometimes I forget what it's about, because Lyriel or Lyriel and Aborson are so clear in my head that sometimes I forget that Sabriel is like set before. Basically, it's set in this place where there is this wall, and on one side of the wall is the Old Kingdom, and in the Old Kingdom there is someone called the Aborson who kind of uses bells. I may be saying that wrong, I do apologize. But they use bells to kind of control the dead and send them back to death. So sometimes the dead come back, and it's the Aborson's kind of job to keep them under control. And on the other side of the wall is like our world, and I believe Sabriel has been sent to our world for like to go to school or something, and then something happens to her dad, and so she's going back to kind of help rescue her dad, and shenanigans happen. It is such a good series, and it has been so freaking long since I read it, clearly, because I've described it so well. So maybe I need to reread this soon, you know? But I've been saying that about a lot of things recently, and I still have so much on my shelves to actually read for the first time. For my manga rec, I've gone for a cover that is a jewel tone, allegedly, according to the graphic that I showed you, okay? I've gone for One Dance because to me, that blue is the same as the one on that graphic. Let's just not question it, okay? I in fact think, because the covers for this are so colourful and so many of them looked like they were the jewel tones on that graphic that I showed you, so possibly a very good contender. This is about a young guy, I believe it's pronounced Cabo. It's Kaboko Kutani, but I think they call him Cabo. And he kind of finds dance like quite late in his teenage years. Like, I say quite late, how old is he? Like 16 maybe? Anyway, so it is quite late to start dancing. And so he joins this dance group, and everybody has been dancing a really long time, but he just falls in love with it, and he just starts to find like this confidence, and he just really enjoys it, and he gets like really good at it. And he kind of decides to join it because he sees this girl called Wanda dance. One Dance. He sees her dance, and she just like is so good and so in her own world, and he just becomes totally enamored with, not with her, although maybe, but more with kind of like this freedom, the way that she is when she dances. And honestly, I'm having such a good time with it. I am 5 volumes in, and the way that dance is drawn in this, it's just so beautiful. Like, it really comes across well on the page. I did dance for a long time, from when I was like 3 to when I was like 17, and then I kind of went back to it for a little while when I was maybe 18, 19, and then, you know, clearly I should have kept it up. Maybe I'd be a bit more svelte, but I kind of understand some of this, but a lot of it I don't, because it's a very different style of dance. But you can really just kind of like feel the passion on the page. I really like this series, and I really need to continue it. Then we have a fun one, which is to assist with painting the town mural. Mural. I've managed to pick a prompt I can't say, because the way I nearly called it a mural, maybe, who knows. And this is to read a graphic novel or manga. So obviously this was going to be quite an easy one for me. Any of the manga ones that I've already recommended or recommend later in the video, you could also use for this prompt, obviously. For my book prompt, I've gone for a graphic novel, obviously, and I've picked Check Please. This is a really adorable 2-volume graphic novel, and it's about this guy who I think is called Bitty, which does make me laugh. And he was a figure skater, so he joins the ice hockey team, and he kind of is part of the team, and I believe they all live in like a big house together. It's been a long time since I read it, shockingly, but he just kind of loves to bake. He has a YouTube channel where he bakes, and then he kind of meets this guy, and it's just really sweet and cute, and it's him kind of like still getting to skate and still getting to bake, but also becoming part of like the ice hockey team and the friendship and stuff, and it's just really, really sweet. I really should reread this too. Oh, I forgot how cute it is. Y'all, I might not be ready for this. I may be a former junior figure skating champion, vlogger extraordinaire, and very talented amateur patisserie? But being a freshman on the Samuel University hockey team is a whole new challenge. It's nothing like co-ed club hockey back in Georgia. First of all, there's checking, and then there is Jack. You see the problem? Adorable. Adorable. And then I have 4 mangas that I haven't mentioned in anything else, and I wanted a chance to mention them because I highly recommend them. We have Windbreaker, which is one that I'm really, really enjoying at the moment. And it's basically about this guy who goes to a town because the high school there is full of delinquents and he wants to be like the head delinquent. He is there just to kind of fight. And when he gets there, it's very different because the town absolutely love the high school because they protect the town, and he's kind of like discovering a lot about himself and getting to know the other guys and changing his perspective on the world. And I love it so much. And actually, I think some of them maybe have dual tones, but because I don't really know the dual tones that well, take that with a pinch of salt. I'm only 2 volumes in, but let me tell you about Blue Period. This is another one I've absolutely been loving, and it's about this guy whose name escapes me, Yatora, and he has lived his entire life just trying to kind of like live up to his mum's expectations, basically. He's a bit of a delinquent, but he's also incredibly bright, and he kind of is the top of his class, and he has a lot of pressure. And then one day he kind of sees a piece of artwork that really speaks to him, and he decides to try art, and for the first time he's doing something for himself. So again, it's kind of like finding himself and finding this passion, and it's honestly really beautiful. And what I love about it is his friends in it. They, even though they're kind of like delinquents and they should probably tease him for it, they're really good. Like, it's really sweet. So yeah, highly recommend. Obviously there is some conflict with his mum in particular, but oh god, also I'm learning so much about art, you know. Then it would be remiss of me not to mention King in Limbo, which is an absolute obsession. This is a 6 volumes technically, they're 2-volume bind-ups. And this is about a world where there has been this sleeping sickness. So people were going to sleep and not waking up. And then to kind of combat it, they would send in somebody like into the patient's mind, kind of like Inception style. They would go into the subconscious to try and wake them up, basically. And then the sleeping sickness was cured, life moved on, but now the sleeping sickness is back. And so we have Adam Garfield, who was in the US Navy and has been in an accident and has lost his leg. And just when he thinks he's going to retire, they say, oh, actually, you're really compatible with this guy. His name is Rune Winter, and he is known as King because he solved the sleeping sickness before. So now they're going to work together and try and solve it this time. And obviously there is more to it, and it gets shady, and it's so good, and it's so short, and everyone should read it. And of course, I couldn't possibly do an entire recommendation video where I'm recommending loads of manga and not talk about Attack on Titan. This is my favourite thing. I feel like I've hit it well. I feel like nobody knows that. So yeah, let me tell you about it. This is set in a world where giant titans came and started eating people, and what's left of humanity is kind of inside these walls and just trying to live. And there is this team called the Scouts, and they go out of the walls and try to like figure out how to take land back, because they used to have another wall, and then this guy turned up and he was taller than the wall, and they lost a lot of land. And it's one of the best written things I've ever read. The twists and turns in it. Isayama's a genius, an actual genius, and I cannot recommend this enough. Thank you. Thank you for listening to me ramble about Attack on Titan once again. Up next is Local Inn Seeking Bard, and this is to read a book with music or an audiobook. So I've gone for Frankenstein as an audiobook because there is an audiobook on Audible where it's narrated by Dan Stevens, and every single time I reread it, so I read it for the first time using that audiobook and was like, this is amazing, so good. The second time, fully intended to read it physically, ended up listening to the audiobook again, just reread this, fully intended on reading it physically, listen to the audiobook again, because it's one of my favourite audiobooks. I think that Dan Stevens does an absolutely amazing job with it and just really brings it to life. So if you haven't read Frankenstein yet and you'd quite like to, but you're worried about maybe the writing style, because that was my issue, I was very worried about the writing style because me and classics don't get on that well, I cannot recommend that audiobook enough. Seriously, I love it. I've read a lot of audiobooks in the past where I thought, God, that was so good, but there is something about that one that it's my favourite way to consume it because it's just so well done. Frankenstein is about this guy called Victor Frankenstein who basically tries to play God, and creates life, and then basically just leaves it to its own devices and is shocked when shit goes down. My manga recommendation was pretty easy as well. I've gone for Given, which is a BL about these guys that are in a band and people are like falling in love and then they're making music and there's like drama, and it's really, really good so far. Like, I'm a little bit behind, but I remember reading like the first volume after kind of putting it off for a really, really long time, and then I think I borrowed Emma's while I was staying with her and was just like, oh, okay, let me just order it all. And I really need to like catch up because I'd like to watch the show. There's like a live action and maybe there's definitely a live action, and I would really like to watch it. Our penultimate one is mercenaries needed to protect local camp, and the prompt is to read a book with night, stars or moon on the cover or in the title. I had to check that one. I didn't want to miss anything. So first up, learning from my mistakes, I'm going to cover the cover of this, and it is Clown in a Cornfield. As you can see, we have a night sky. There is even a full moon there, but I'm just going to keep my hands over this because I don't know if you've seen my recent vlog where I read Clown in Cornfield 3, but editing Gemma would actually have gone back in time to murder filming Gemma because of all of that waving the book around. I don't know, in filming Gemma's defense, I don't know why editing Gemma felt the need to put a smiley face over it rather than just like a small one just over the clown's face. If I'd just done a big one like I did at the start over the whole cover, probably would have been less stressful. I'm just saying. Anyway, Clown in a Cornfield. This is about a girl called Quinn who moves to a small town with her father, and when she gets there, it just turns into a slasher film. It just turns into a slasher film. There is something going on in the town, and she goes to a party, and all hell breaks loose. And all of these clowns start murdering kids. Seriously, one of my favourite series. It is like reading a slasher in a book. It is so freaking good. All three of them have been absolutely fantastic for me. 5 stars across the board. If Adam Cesare wants to write a 4th one, 5th one, 6th one, I'll read it. I'll read the shit out of it. For manga, I've gone for Box of Light, so this is actually all night. It's all night. This is about like this weird convenience store kind of on the edge of life and death, but it's quite wholesome because it's kind of people going to the convenience store, they don't necessarily know what's happened to them, and some go one way, some go the other, and we're kind of following these people that work in the convenience store and kind of finding out how they worked there. There's only like 2 volumes of this so far. It is a little weird, but it's mostly just quite wholesome and quite, I was going to say soft. Obviously it deals with some hard subject matter, but it's also just quite lovely. I'm not really sure how to describe it, but I have been really enjoying this. So we'll definitely be keeping my eye out for a hopeful volume 3. I also, in the vein, I don't know what this was, in the vein of bending prompts, because you know that me and Ash love a good prompt bend, I have one for you. Okay, so remember it said star on the cover, a star. Okay, now I have in my hands the Yakuza's Bias, and this is about a member of the Yakuza who becomes obsessed with K-pop, and right here, that's a K-pop idol, which would be a star. I was about to say, oh, there's actually a star on there, but it's not, it's just crosses. But that would be a star, right? A singer? That's a star. So there's a prompt bend for you. And actually, foiling, because that's shiny. I don't know if that counts as foiling, but it is super shiny. So this is really funny, like ridiculously funny, because he is like full-on Yakuza man, and then he just becomes absolutely obsessed with K-pop, and it's hilarious. Highly recommend. And finally for this video, we have help install the ramp at Town Hall, and this is disability rep, so that it can be hidden, mental, physical. My book recommendation is The Twisted Tree by Rachel Burge, and this is about a girl called Martha who fell out of a tree at her grandmother's cabin. Her grandmother lived in Norway, and she went blind in one eye, and ever since then, if she touches something, she can kind of feel and understand people's emotions and memories, and she's trying to understand it. So she's going back to see her grandmother, but when she gets there, her grandmother is dead and there is this strange boy living in the cabin, and it goes from there. There are some creepy moments. It has a lot of links to Norse mythology, and it was so good. I was actually really lucky with this book because I had a NetGalley ARC, and then Rachel Berge very kindly sent me an ARC, and then I actually went to her book launch. So I have a signed book and a signed ARC, which is right here, which was really lovely. So yeah, I have 2 versions of this book, and I highly recommend it. I still haven't read the follow-up though, which is my bad, because I've been meaning to read it for a very long time, but also this year has not been the year for fantasy, and that has scared me. But back to this one, highly recommend it, especially if you like mythology and stuff, because I think it is really well done in this, and I remember really liking the characters, and it, yeah, like I say, it does have some creepy moments, so I should reread that. This is dangerous. How many times have I said that in this video? This is dangerous. Hilariously, I have been saying all year that I need to reread this last recommendation for manga. I've gone for Blackguard. This is another kind of short manga series. It's 5 volumes. I absolutely adored this. Adored it. This is one of the manga series that has made me cry. So there's that. And this does have quite a lot of disability representation. There is kind of amputees in it. There is a mental disorder, which is kind of like, it's so hard to explain. There are definitely trigger warnings in this for suicidal ideation, because our main character kind of doesn't really care whether he lives or dies. He doesn't really take great care of himself, and he goes out to fight these creatures, because it's set in this Tokyo where these creatures called shoujo came. They're kind of like ape type things, and started like killing people, and so humanity kind of lives in like these facilities and stuff, and he is known as the Blackguard. He's like one of the best fighters, and he goes out to fight the shoujo, but everybody wears white because there is this white fog over the entire city, so if you wear white you'll be harder to spot. He wears a black cape, like a beacon almost, and he is one of the top fighters. So even though he goes out and like kind of isn't actively trying to die, but is actively not trying to die, he's just really good at it. Then his higher ups basically start to panic, because they're like, somebody really needs to be keeping an eye on him, so they kind of give him a partner. And for the first time, Minami, our main character, starts to actually like feel an emotion for another human being. Oh god, I really do really want to reread it. I really do want to reread it, so much so that I can't actually speak. So I just love it. I just love it. That was my shoulder. I just love it. And that's all the recommendations I have for you. As I said at the beginning of the video, head on over to Ash's channel for recommendations for the other half of the prompts. If you want to let me know in the comments any recommendations that you have for any of these prompts, just for people that are still putting their TBRs together. If you want to let me know something that you're reading in November, if you're taking part, let me know. If you just want me to know you're here, that per part is always appreciated. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you're not already subscribed and like to see more content from me, remember to hit that button, leave a like if you want to, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!